So I was supposed to speak about something about bread and the road and remembering. But the line that I couldn't let go of this week was, as Jesus came near and saw the city, he wept over it. So when we think about Palm Sunday, our images are all mushed together from which version of the gospel we've decided to read. And we've put them all in one spot because in the Gospel of John, you get to wave palm branches and there are no cloaks. And in the Gospel of Mark, you ride one animal and you wave you wave branches and you spread cloaks. In the Gospel of Matthew, you ride two animals at the same time and wave branches and spread cloaks. But this is the year of Luke, so we're in the Gospel of Luke. And in the Gospel of Luke, there are no branches. There are just cloaks. Because Luke wants to say stuff to us about the people that surround Jesus, about what they have, what is available to them, what they are able to give, and what they have. Because remember, Jesus sent the disciples out into the world with a cloak and some sandals and a stick. And so what they had to show his kingdom was a cloak that they spread before him. And it says in the Gospel of Luke that they went to seek a young colt. So how many of you have ever ridden a horse? All right, so when I was a teenager, from the time I was little, I was horse crazy. And Grandpa had lots of horses, and they had, the ones that we could ride were these big, giant, huge workhorses. I mean, they made my dad, who was 6'2" and built like a football player, look small, okay? And we were invited to get on them. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever gotten on a horse that's taller than you are and wider than you are? And you're thinking, this sounded good in my head before I got on the horse, right? And so the horse took off because it was like, this person does not know what she is doing. So I had the best gallop around the potato field. Jesus is put on a colt. Do you know what that is? That's a young horse. And particularly it says here, a horse that hasn't been ridden before. Like Jesus is placed on a horse that has never had a human on it. So I picture him like me, like the horse just goes boom, right? But it has this interesting line about the disciples set him upon their cloaks, which they had put on the horse. And then they head towards Jerusalem. Now, we usually think of this entrance as in, because in the movies, it always shows them moving through Jerusalem, right? But the story in Luke stops us before we actually get to Jerusalem. Jesus gets on the colt and begins this journey. And when he's on the hill, the last hill before going into Jerusalem from his direction, that's when we have the line. As he came near the city, saw the city, he wept over it. And so during this section, all the people had been singing Hosanna. They had been singing, save us. And they had been singing the words of his birth. In the other Gospels, we have, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. In this Gospel, we have, blessed is the King, not the one, but the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heavens, peace. They sing what the angels sang to the shepherds. They sing of peace coming to the land with Jesus entering. And what Jesus does is he sits down on that hill. And I should say, before he sits down on that hill, as everybody is singing and shouting, "Save us," the religious folk that he's been quarreling with about how to lead the best life you can with God have said to him, "You need to make them stop. You need to make them stop this. Don't you see what's coming from the other side of the city? Don't you see the ruler? Don't you see Pontius Pilate and his soldiers and chariots? Don't you see them entering the city from the other direction? You need to quiet down. Don't make waves. Don't cause us to get into trouble." And Jesus says to them, "I tell you, if these, the followers, were silent, the stones would shout out." So how many of you know that that's an allusion to Habakkuk? So there's a line in Habakkuk where he's referring to the oppressive Babylonians, and he writes, "Alas for you who get evil gain for your houses, setting your nest on high to be safe from the realm of harm. You have devised shame on your house. By cutting off many peoples, you have forfeited your life. The very stones will cry out from the walls, and the plaster will respond from the woodwork." It's a really intense image, an intense anger, and prophetic, passionate language coming from an occupied people, saying that even if we can't sing out and demand our freedom, demand equality, demand our place in this spot, even if we can't sing out the words, the very stones in this building will cry out for justice, cry out for us to have a house and a home and a place of safety. The house itself will cry out. And that's how Jesus responds to those saying to him as he's watching the Roman Empire come in all its glory. He says to them, even if they don't sing, these stones, these houses, are going to sing of what the empire has done to us, are going to sing out for salvation, are going to sing out to be saved. And so after that confrontation, that's when Jesus, at that top of the hill, watching the Roman Empire come, it says, he saw the city, and he wept over it, saying, if you, even you, had only recognized on this day the things that make for peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. He's heartbroken. He's crying over his people. He's crying over the temple. He sees his people have turned away from the path of love, the path of peace. And instead, what is happening is a violence to the whole people. And people are starting to forget his ministry. Starting to forget the world he has been sharing about what it should look like how people should be to each other. And so the tears came. He let them fall down his face because they had been building up. In Luke 13, it said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jesus cries, the city that kills the prophet and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. He was already prepared for the seat of power for the Jewish people to reject him. He was already prepared for them to choose assimilation with empire instead of fighting back. He was already prepared for them to choose a vision of God that was safe and tame and trapped. And so he was crying out for his people. He was crying out for this city that's in the imagination of all of them as the site of hope and freedom, of salvation. He was crying out because he had heard the stories. What stories have you heard this week that would cause Jesus to weep? That would cause Jesus to say, even if nobody else sees it, the stones will cry out. What stories? Did you cry out when you saw again that Israel bombed the hospital in Gaza and claimed that it was a site for Hamas? Did you cry out as you realized that for 42 days there has been no food, no medicine, no supplies entering Gaza? Even the stones will cry out. Did you cry out when you saw that Russia decided that we're going to torture Zelensky this week and bomb his village, his town? Did you cry out as those people died under the bombing? Did you hear those stones that fell on top of those bodies cry out for saving, for justice? What made you cry out this week? And that was just the foreign news. We didn't even get to Sudan. In Sudan this week, the army that is coming in from, I forget its current name, coming in to take over Sudan, decided that this week we will go ahead and bomb the refugee camps that are suffering from famine because nobody can get the food to them safely. The refugee camps. Did that make your heart break? Did it make you hear the stones cry out? That's just the world news. Why don't we draw a little bit closer? What are the things that make for peace? Because that's why Jesus is crying, right? That the people have turned away, have hidden from their eyes, and can no longer see the visitation of God in their midst. And so he's crying out, weeping over the people because he's asking how they could forget the things that make for peace. So if you were to Google this, what would come up? What would come up about what makes for peace? For Jesus, it is what we talked about in Epiphany, right? Every week of Epiphany, we broke up his mission statement and looked at each of those items, the items that we sang in the very first song today. The song that asked us to think about that mission statement, about the day of the Lord coming, about the blind seeing and the lame walking, about justice for people. The things that make for peace, Jesus believes, are the things that he showed us step by step as he walked the earth. The things that make for peace are the kindness you show to the beggar beside the road who nobody else has stopped, who nobody else has spoken to or touched. The beggar who cries out for mercy, and Jesus stops, sees him, and heals him. The things that make for peace are that bit of kindness, that practice of kindness that says to that person, I see you. The things that make for peace are that practice of compassion. As he encountered again and again people who were hurting, people who didn't have the ability to afford doctors, people who didn't have a cure for what ailed them. Each of those people, and it is crowds of people, Jesus sees them and heals them again and again and again. And he talks to them about what are the ways of peace. The Sermon on the Plain lays it out. It lays out how all those that you don't think are blessed are meant to be blessed. It lays out that forgiveness is at the heart of peace. That if you cannot forgive, then you're never going to move towards peace. And not just forgive your family members, but forgive the person that it is the hardest to forgive. And yes, right now I know who that is in my life because he annoys me every hour of every day. But Jesus calls me to be better, to think about the things of peace, the ways of peace, to practice kindness and compassion, to practice active listening, to hear not just the words that come out of someone's mouth, but the words that are trapped in their heart that they don't even speak out loud. Because if you read through the gospel stories, you see again and again, people are saying this, and Jesus responds with what was really hurting them. Jesus asks us to think about the ways of peace and to weep. This climate scientist that I follow, who lives in the Santa Cruz area, because he's always taking pictures of the sunset, said that 3 of his grants, the things that fund his work to teach us about how we can learn to live differently on this earth, those grants were all canceled. So what does that mean for him and his young kids and his family? He's one of the people that took the otter photos, the one that attacked the surfboard. What does it mean for him that his grants will no longer be there? Does that mean that his job at the university will be done? Or will they let him still teach, but have to cut things back? So the assistants that were there to help with his research, the admins that did all the collation for everything, will they be let go so he can have his job? When we think about the things that make for peace, we're reminded to think about those stories. I don't know how many of you have seen this week in interviews, because he just put out a new book, and so it's all over the news. Michael Levin wanted to find out what government workers did. And so if the book is published this week, that means it started way before Trump took office, okay? So he has been on a quest the last few years to find out what government workers actually do. And the first one he picked, he just randomly chose the first person on the list of people and went to find out what their job was. In the book, he chooses on his list, he looked at who are the employees who received the awards for being a government worker. And the one that stuck out to him was the scientist who figured out how to stop coal mines' roofs from falling in and killing coal miners. Because he said, what caught my eye is it said he used to be a coal miner. And so he wanted to hear his story about what made him move from being a coal miner to being the one who figured out how to prevent roofs from caving in. Because everybody who had tackled this problem in the government before tackled it as an architectural problem. They had looked at the story of why roofs cave in as we just need to build the right structure. And he looked at it as a geologist and looked at how the earth was shaped and how you could figure out how to dig these mines. His story was powerful and moving. That was just one of the many stories told. And so when our hearts break this week, are they breaking for all those losing their jobs who do the things that we didn't even know our government was doing, like saving the roofs in a coal mine? Do we weep for them? But do we practice the way of peace? Do we enter the city even as the empire is coming towards us? Do we shout out, "Save us," even as the empire is drawing near? What makes your heart break this week? So I don't know about you, but every time I open my Blue Sky feed or my Instagram feed, I am confronted by stories of immigrants who have been taken for no reason. Students who have lost their visas, and that usually means that you have the whole semester to finish and then you are sent home, so that you have time to correct whatever was wrong. Instead, they were given letters saying they had to be out of the country this week immediately. So, do you know how our colleges fund letting poor income people attend college? They do it through foreign students. So when we kick out the foreign students, we are kicking out the people that make it possible for me to go to college when I went to college. Because they paid the full rate, not the discounted rate. And they don't receive usually the scholarships and grants that lower that rate. So to kick out the students is to kick out the things that make it possible for the colleges to thrive. Because many of them get trained in the fields that we don't often go into, because we have the luxury of choosing philosophy, choosing music and the arts. They choose science and engineering. And when we kick them out, that next vaccine that we need may not be created. That next cure for cancer may not be researched. There is so much going on right now in our countries that make us weep. And we are invited to weep with Jesus, but to remember that we're the stones. That when no one else is crying out, save us, we cry out, save us. Hosanna, save us. Because we're expecting the visitation of God, the blessing of God coming to us. And in the meantime, we cry out with the stones. We cry out, save us.